I'm his wife. Ryan's heart dropped. Wife. She stared at Nancy, struggling to find her voice. She had no idea Jungkook was married, let alone someone like her. Just as Ryan opened her mouth to respond, the door swung open again, and Jungkook stepped into the room, his gaze immediately landing on Nancy. His expression tightened. Nancy, he said, tone low and controlled. What are you doing here? Nancy smirked, crossing her arms over her chest. I was about to ask you the same thing. Who is she? She gestured towards Ryan with a taunting look, her eyes narrowing slightly. Jungkook remained silent, his jaw tightening as he looked at Nancy. After a tense pause, he returned his gaze to Ryan. Step outside for a moment, he ordered, his voice firm but calm. Ryan didn't hesitate. The tension in the room was unbearable, and all she wanted was to escape. Without a word, she stood up and quietly slipped out of the door, relieved to be away from the awkward confrontation. Ryan stood outside the office. The seconds felt like hours as she tried to process everything, but her thoughts were interrupted by the office door burst open, and Nancy stormed out, muttering curses under her breath. She shot Ryan a cold, contemptuous look before marching down the hall, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. Ryan swallowed nervously, her chest tightening, but before she could fully correct herself, the door opened again and Jungkook stepped out. His face was still hardened from whatever conversation had taken place inside. Without a word, he grabbed Ryan's arm, his grip firm as he pulled her along with him. Let's go, he muttered, his voice low. Ryan winced slightly, his grip tighter than he probably realized. Your grip, it's hurting me, she managed to say, her voice small. He stopped abruptly, turning to face her. His eyes followed her hand as she massaged the spot where his finger had been, the skin already turned red. His expression softened immediately, the anger from earlier fading away, and for a moment he just stared at the mark before letting go. Jungkook cleared his throat. Baejun, he called out. Within moments a tall man dressed in sharp suit appeared. His voice flickered between Ryan and Jungkook, reading the situation without a word. Get the car, we are going, he ordered. Ryan's eye drifted down to their joined hands, unable to focus on anything else as they walked through the mall. Jungkook held her hand softly this time, nothing like the harsh grip from earlier. His fingers were warm against her, and the way he was guiding her through felt almost protective. She glanced up at his face, the sharpness from the last night gone, replaced by a calmness she hadn't expected. He didn't look like the monster she had feared last night when he had tried to force himself on her. Now he seems like a different person, one who was spoiling her with the clothes and attention. Baejun trailed behind them, holding the many shopping bags filled with the casual clothes Jungkook had bought to her. But Ryan couldn't shake the confusion in her heart. She came from nothing. Her father used to curse at her, sometimes beat her after he'd been drinking. She had learned to bear it all quietly because there was nowhere to turn. Yet there was Jungkook behaving like a kid, buying her things she never even dreamed of having. The contrast was confusing, but Ryan refused to believe the warmth in his touch or the kindness in his action, not to forget he is a married man too. Shaking her head, she tried to clear those thoughts, to remind herself that this was all temporary, all part of something she couldn't yet understand. They came to a stop outside a sleek-looking shop. Ryan stared at it, realizing it was a salon. Jungkook pushed the door open, his grip on her hand still gentle as they entered. Mia, he called out, his voice carrying through the air. A woman in her 30s emerged from the back, her eyes lighting up when she saw Jungkook. Then her gaze shifted to Ryan, and she smiled, but her eyes seemed to analyze her, looking her over from head to toe. Ryan felt a sudden wave of shyness under Mia's warm, but assessing gaze. Mia's expression softened as though she was looking at a younger sister. She cooed gently. Oh my, where did you find this sweet thing? Her tone was affectionate, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Jungkook, unfazed, simply replied, I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to give her full makeover, make it perfect. Mia nodded, her smile turning brighter. Of course, she said, motioning for Ryan to follow. Come with me, sweetheart. Ryan hesitated, glancing back at Jungkook one last time. He gave her a slight nod, and she followed Mia deeper into the salon. The tension from earlier still lingering, but softened by the strange new reality she found herself in. Jungkook stood near the entrance of the salon, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke with Jimin. Yeah, I'll be there on time, don't worry, he reassured, his tone casual but firm. Yeah, she came today in office. He was about to say something else when Mia called his name from across the room. He turned towards the sound of her voice, but as soon as his eyes landed on Van, everything around seemed to be stopped. Conversation with Jimin forgotten. Van stood there dressed in sleek fitted emerald green dress. The dress hugged her curves in all right places, elegant yet understated. The neckline dipped just enough to be tasteful, and the dress itself flowed smoothly on her ankles, revealing a delicate pair of heels that made her leg look longer. Her hair was styled in a soft waves, framing her face perfectly. The light makeup accentuated her natural beauty, her lips tinted with a subtle blush, and her eyes sparkling under the salon light. Jungkook couldn't tear his gaze away. She looked stunning. More than that, she looked completely transformed, like she was born to wear such luxury. His chest tightened at the sight, the word beautiful echoing in his mind, but he remained silent, too captivated to say anything. Wine, feeling the weight of his stare, nervously touched her burning cheeks, trying to cover the blush rising there. She looked down, unsure of how to handle the intensity of his gaze. After a moment of silence, Mia cleared her throat, breaking all the spell in the air. Well, is no one going to say anything? She teased, a hint of amusement in her voice. She turned to Jungkook, raising an eyebrow. How does she look? Without thinking, Jungkook replied dreamily perfect. He blinked, realizing he had spoken out loud. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he shifted his stance. I mean, she looked great. You did a good job, Mia. Thanks for the hard work. Mia chuckled softly, clearly amused by the whole situation. Glad you approve, she said with a knowing smile. Jungkook quick nodded and turned back to Wine, who still seemed a bit shy under his gaze. Let's go, he said, his voice softer now. He gestured Wine for her to follow him. Wine stood near the long table, her fingers slightly grazing the edge as she sheared the spread of appetizer through. She wasn't really hungry. Her eyes kept drifting across the room, landing on Jungkook because he is the only person she knows here. But he was with Nancy, his wife. Of course he was. He was hosting this party, and Nancy seemed to be determined to stay by his side, clinging to his arms in a way that made Wine feel an odd pang she couldn't explain. Even from a distance, she could see the discomfort on Jungkook's face as he tried to remain professional, greeting guests while Nancy leaned into him, her smile a little too bright. Wine found bitterness swirling inside her, though she didn't want to admit it. Why did he even bring me here if he is with her? She thought. It made no sense to her. They were husband and wife after all, but somehow seeing them together stirred feelings she wasn't ready to name. As she stood there lost in her thoughts, Jimin suddenly appeared beside her, pulling her attention away from the scene. He greeted her politely, flashing a friendly smile. I don't think we have officially met. I'm Park Jimin. Wine remembered him standing beside Jungkook in the crowd last night. Must be his friend. So she gave him a small hesitant smile. Kim Wine, nice to meet you. Be comfortable around me. I don't bite, Miss Wine. He joked a little, which made her finally smile without any restraint. Jimin seemed more relaxed than Jungkook. His tone is kind respectful, which put Wine at ease. I know there might be so many questions in your mind right now, but I wanted to tell you that Jungkook had brought you because he just wanted to save you from that place, Jimin said after a moment of seeing the inner turmoil on her face. His way of showing things is different, I'll admit, but if someone else had brought you at the auction yesterday, your life could have been a lot worse. Wine shuddered at the thought. He quickly pushed it aside. I don't want to imagine that, she replied quietly. Jimin nodded, his expression softening with understanding. I get it, but still I'm sorry for the way Jungkook has been treating you. He's not a bad guy, despite how he might come across. He got a lot of anger issues and that's something he struggles to control. Vine bit her lip, unsure of how to respond in her mind. All she could think of about the last night, how Jungkook had almost forced himself on her. How could someone be like good? She refused to believe on it, no matter what Jimin said. Her attention drifted back to Jungkook, who was deep in conversation with some business partners. His expression was serious, but very now and then she felt his eyes flicker towards her. Just as her gaze returned to Jimin, he grinned playfully. You know, he said with a teasing tone, A girl as beautiful as shouldn't be left standing alone. Wan's cheek warmed and she smiled shyly, though she couldn't ignore the brief glance Jungkook had shot in their direction. Their eyes met for a second. Jungkook's eyebrows creased before he turned back to his conversation while her eyes stayed on the linking arms of Nancy and Jungkook, as he didn't push her away. Jimin must have noticed because he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. I heard you already met Nancy. Wyan nodded, her face neutral. Yeah, I did, Jimin sighed, mumbling under his breath. That explains why she is being extra possessive today. Wyan blinked, confused. What do you mean? Jimin tilted his head, giving her a knowing look. Nancy's seen you, and it's confirmed her delusion now. That's why she's acting like that. But you should know there's nothing between her and Jungkook. Their marriage is just for show, for the press, even though they are still married to the world. But inside no one knows that they don't even live together anymore. Nancy already in a relationship with someone else, but because Jungkook doesn't give her the attention she craves, she gets jealous easily whenever a new woman is around him. That's probably what triggered her today, seeing Jungkook taking an interest in you. Van frowned, the information swirling in her mind. I understand her possessiveness, being wife even they don't have any relationship. But you shouldn't be jealous of me because me and Mr. Jimin has nothing between us. That could be, but you're the first girl he had bring to his loft and office too, as he doesn't let her enter there. Maybe that's why she is jealous. Hearing from Jimin that she is the first girl he let her in loft and office made her shocked, because she thought that he was another womanizer. Should she feel special about it? No, she won't let it slide, but he did between those closed walls. When I was in Mr. Jion's office, Miss Nancy said that I'm his toy. Isn't that proof he brings a lot of girl there before me? Jimin laughs a little, leaning back. No, Nancy has been always paranoid about Jungkook having an affair behind her back. And it's been 2 years to their marriage? She have already accused him for having relationship with multiple girls. Even it was for business purpose, as those girls were just employees, sometimes business partner too. And it's all because Jungkook don't pay attention to her. Wyan nodded in understanding, but then she realized that she has no right to even talk about all this stuff. It's not like Jungkook owe her any explanation. I have a question, Jimin. Why are you telling me all of this? Jimin met her eyes seriously this time. I just don't want you to misunderstand Jungkook. Wan's expression hardened slightly, her voice quiet but firm. It doesn't matter if I misunderstand him or not. That's not my business. Mr. Jihoon bought me, yes. But that doesn't mean we have any kind of relationship, right? Jimin hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly, though something flickered behind his eyes. As soon as Jungkook and Nancy reached a secluded area behind the party venue, away from the prying eyes of guests, he harshly jerked her hand off his arm, his voice low and filled with irritation. I remember your name wasn't in the guest list, so how dare you come here? Didn't I tell you that you are not invited? Nancy ignored his anger, her eyes narrowing as she straightened her dress. Oh, you didn't want me to come because you wanted to bring her. Openly showing your mistress now, huh? She threw a sharp glance in the direction of Wyan, who was laughing softly with Jimin across the room. Jungkook noticed the venom in her voice and stepped in front of Nancy, blocking her view of Wyan. His voice dropped to an even colder tone. She is not mistress, and stay away from my business, Nancy. I don't interfere whatever you do with your boyfriend, so don't meddle in my affairs. Nancy's eyes flashed with annoyance, her lips curling into a sneer. You think I won't do anything, Jungkook? What if my dad finds about her? You know that it won't be good for you. Jungkook's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding in anger. He took a step closer, his voice dangerously calm. Forgetting about your little boyfriend there, let me remind you something you are forgetting. The deal was simple. We pretend to be married in front of the media. That's it. Our personal lives are own and they have no foundation. So I am warning you for the last time. Nancy opened her mouth to reply, but before she could, Jungkook turned on his heel, walking away from her. Van stood out on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against her skin. She felt a strange sense of peace out here, away from the noise and tension of the party. The moon hung brightly in the sky but looks as lonely as hers. She smiles bitterly as she couldn't help but think about how her life has spiraled into this mess. Bought at an auction, trapped in a world she didn't belong to, her thoughts ran deep, wondering what her future held. The moment of solitude interrupted by sound of footsteps behind her. She sighed internally, wishing for just a little more time alone. Turning around, she saw a man approaching her, but it wasn't Jimin or Jungkook, it was someone else. "Hello, I hope I'm not disturbing you," the man said, his tone casual yet unsettling. "By the way, I am Sehun." Vine gave him a quick glance, feeling uneasy. There was something about him that made her feel on edge, like she had seen him before but couldn't quite place where. Still, she forced a polite nod, though all she wanted to be left alone. "Vine, hi," she said awkwardly, keeping her tone distant. Sehun didn't seem to be notice her discomfort, or more likely didn't care. He continued, leaning casually against the balcony railing. "I don't know if you remember me," he said with a slight smirk, his eyes studying her too closely for comfort. "But I know you." Van blinked, surprised. "How?" "I was at the auction yesterday," he smiled slightly. Her heart sank. Another person who had seen her on the stage, vulnerable and powerless. Her mind spun with the thought of how many people had watched her in that humiliating moment. She shifted uncomfortably, suddenly feeling exposed, and didn't want to be here anymore. Every second she spent around Sehun made her skin crawl, but he kept talking. "You don't look happy," he said, his voice lowering as he leaned in slightly. "Being with Jungkook, I could help you, help you to get away from him." Van's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her face. "Why would you want to help me?" she asked, her voice cautious. As a person who get betrayed by her own father, she knew better than to trust anyone offering help without reason. There was no good people here, only those looking out for their own interest. Sehun shrugged casually, but his eyes gleamed with something darker. "Let's just say I don't like seeing people stuck where they don't belong." Vine forced an awkward smile, shaking her head. "Thanks, but no thanks, I'm fine." "You didn't look like fine, that's why I asked." "And you don't know Jungkook, right? The moment he'll show you his worst side, you'll pray for the God to be separated from him. And I'm the only one who can save you if you got angry." She turned to look at him, eyeing the man with narrow eyes, and it looked like he knows more about Jungkook as well, completely opposite from what Jimin told her, and her mind is in mess for whom to believe. "Look, it's your choice, and this might be a last chance because the moment you're back, you are his hostage forever," he said as he brings out a stick from his pocket, rolling it between his fingers. "But if you are slightest interested in my offer, meet me at the second gate through the hallway of the ladies' bathroom, and I'll be waiting for you there." She didn't reply, contemplating his offer as she moves back inside the party. Sehun's eyes follow her, but he didn't stop her. As she slipped inside, he mumbled to himself, his eyes darkening. "Jungkook, you had challenged me, didn't you?" His voice was bitter, filled with resentment. "She would have been mine, but don't worry, Ryan. You'll still be useful. You'll be the perfect way to hurt him." He smiled darkly, lighting up a cigarette stick in his hands and puffing the burnt smoke in the air. Van walked back into the party, her eyes unfocused and mind in mess because of the person she met just now. There is one part of her telling her that she should take a chance and there will be no time to escape from Jungkook, but another was doubting Sehun, and she doesn't know whom to believe now. She weaved through the sea of people, feeling her uneasiness growing after her encounter with Sehun. She bumped to Jimin in midway. "Sorry." "Vine, are you alright?" He frowned, noticing the uneasiness in her voice. "You don't look well." "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a small smile. "I just want to go back." Jimin nodded, concern still attached to his face. "Alright, I'll go find Jungkook for you. Wait here, okay?" As Vine looks back at balcony and Sehun was no longer there, her thoughts again drift to his offer. This might be her last chance. As she was about to move, but suddenly a waiter hurried past her carrying a tray of drinks, spilling all over her dress. The cold liquid soaked into the fabric and Vine's mood worsened instantly. The waiter looked horrified, apologizing over and over. "I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't mean to." It's okay, she replied, trying to keep her voice calm despite her frustration. Could you just tell me where the restroom is? The waiter quickly guided her, and she made her way towards the bathroom, trying to shake off the sense of uneasiness that had been following her all evening. She wanted to check that Sehun was lying or not. Her feet moved towards the outside the back gate, but find no one standing there, and she sighed, knowing that she shouldn't have to believe on someone so easily. She was about to head back, but suddenly a sharp pain shot through her neck. Her hand instinctively flew to the spot and spun around, her vision already starting to blur. Standing behind her was Sehun, a malicious smirk on his face. Before Vine could react or cry out, her knees buckled as darkness overtook her and her consciousness faded, and Sehun took her in his arms. It's going to be fun seeing how you gonna lose your mind, Jeon Jungkook.